Guarding the Republic through reason, history, and honest conversation, where duty meets discourse and liberty finds its voice. Together we stand watch as citizens, freelanders, and centenniers, the defenders and guardians of liberty, freedom, and the Republic itself. So grab your favorite adult beverage and join me at the Sentinel Republic.
Oh, bartender, that'll be a double shot of your very best watered down gin right here.
Hello, and welcome back to the Sentinel Republic, where we're going to talk about subject matters and current events, maybe, and just other topics that are going on in the world and what effects it has on our republic and how the Sentinel Republic would view it and whatnot. And something I didn't talk about in my book a while back that's recently come up is our good topic for the day: gerrymandering. Yes, gerrymandering. We had the recent issue with Texas wanting to re-gerrymander some of their districts as to gain a few seats in Congress, and now California's fighting with theirs, but their constitution says they can't, so they're going to have to pass an amendment and exception and all that good stuff, and the voters will have to decide. And we're spending all this time dividing on a subject matter that is actually one of the most divisive, secretly divisive topics, I believe, that no one talks about much, and most people don't even know what it is. However, it is probably the single most divisive, don't mean divisive, but cultural rot of our, not cultural either, but foundational rot of our republic currently. And I'm not trying to exaggerate that. Is very dangerous. And if no one knew, the original Constitution never set a population size or boundary or anything else when it came to the Constitution. I did a paper on it in college. I did talk about it once, and some of this is from my head, but I did retain a few quotes, and I did make sure I wrote them down here so I can express them from some of the founders back in the day when they were creating this thing. And we'll get into what Mr. Gerry, Elbridge Gerry, I believe was his name, who came up with the idea right around the War of 1812, in that range, I believe. I can't remember exact dates, but I remember that he was against the actual idea, in a sense. He didn't support the full... I don't think he saw the vision that it actually came to be, and he did, I think, ended up regretting a lot of his things on that. But that's going from memory. I don't recall exactly, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. But I do remember some of the founding stuff that I had in my original paper that I had, and I did sure I made those right. I don't want to get in him too much. Unfortunately, he did get associated with it because, if I recall, one of the districts originally that came out of some of this looked like a salamander, if I recall, and that's where they got gerrymander out of. So, kind of a fun little tidbit there. But yeah, the irony was he was opposed to some, especially to the extreme partisanship that it could cause. But we're going to go into, like I say, the definition or the founding. I believe it was around 30,000 was the original grouping and separation from the early days of our republic, when it was after we were created, after the Constitution was enacted. And some of the founders, here's a couple of them, from James Madison, the Federalist Papers. He said the number of representatives ought to be kept within a range of that secures local knowledge of the people. And so they want to keep it local. They want to make sure that everyone in that certain area is represented by the same amount of people, but also by the same type of people. Not race or nothing, but like govern people, like in districts and you know, that we're knowledgeable about the same local needs and wants of that area. And Alexander Hamlin agreed, and that number would certainly vary from time to time according to circumstances. So they understood at the time, like rural areas of Georgia or the colonies, now states, would be different. Some would be big, some would be small, some in urban areas would be smaller. They understood that part, but they tried to keep the grouping within the tolerance of like Madison said, knowledge of local people. Then and James Wilson, another one I admired, was a signer of both the Declaration and the Constitution, said it should depend on the ratio between the number of representatives and the number of constituents. So, but there was, in other words, there was no set population cap and no limit on how districts were drawn and shapes. So, the only rule was each state controls how it draws its own lines, which I agree with in a sense, for sure. But unfortunately, they didn't envision this kind of situation, I'm sure. That all said, as we mentioned, Mr. Gerry, he was the governor, I remember, Massachusetts, back in like 1812, somewhere in that range. He came up with the idea, and I don't remember exactly how. That's neither here nor there, but it just became these districts, and it automatically did start right away start separating these. They were like, how can we ingeniously combine these and take advantage each party and create advantages and their influence over certain areas. And in case everyone didn't know, every 10 years when we do the census, that we update our population and our representatives per each state and how the population shifts. As like last census, California lost some districts, Texas gained some districts, etc., etc. And each time they have to redraw these districts to ensure balance is maintained. Right now, I think we're somewhere in the vicinity of 750,000 roughly. I know it's not exactly that, but the average is we're supposed to be shooting for, I think, is about 750,000. I could be wrong in that number, but I know it's close to that at this current time. But the real thing is we see here the official definition nowadays. What's been adopted is the manipulation of an electoral constituency's boundary so as to favor one party or class. And right there shows issues. The whole definition itself is an issue to our republic. And I also, of course, pointing that way, show on the screen here some of the worst offenders. There's plenty of them. We can go into tons and tons. But just here's 4 or 5 examples of some of the worst, just drawn districts that exist out there. I can't even say they're all the worst, but these are some of the most. This is one early, just quick example I found to show how bad some of these districts are drawn, and it's really disgusting, if you want to call it that, and just the obvious partisanship and manipulation of the people and our districts here. And I'll go into explaining why I believe that, and it's pretty obvious why in some regards. But with the background here that we have now, it's become really obvious that this is a huge problem. Each state has its own rules. Each state has its own regulations. And as you can see, when Texas tried to do something which actually kind of did fall in their own scope of things, the other side saw that issues were going to go around, and they just up and left. Just over this matter, and put a halt to all governance in Texas. I don't necessarily agree with the reasoning behind it. I see why. I know why the Republicans are focused on that. I don't care if it's my party or not, which I'm not a Republican, by the way, but at the same time, I would support them over another party. But usually, in most cases, I'm not saying all, but what happens is that they have caused this division and caused this shutdown of government just over a situation that is already out of hand. And now it's spreading. Now it goes to California. So now it's a tit for tat. We got to argue over this. California wants to gerrymander their districts with already gerrymandered. Everything's gerrymandered and everything's breaking down. They're probably going to end up using AI analysis. How can we get an extra 5 votes out of this one, and we can shift this one by a couple inches and take these houses out and put these houses in. It's a ridiculous and unfortunate division, and it all comes down to one thing: money and power. More money, more power, more influence, more gain, and the people get lost. They're not represented anymore, and I'll show you why. And it's really obvious why. And I'll use a quick example here. In Colorado, we have Denver area, metro area. It's separated into a lot of different cities. Westminster. There's Littleton, Aurora. I mean, we can go. Jefferson County surrounds there. There's all these different divisions up there. And Denver itself, the county and city of Denver, sits in a population range that would constitute its own representative in that range of population. I believe the population in Denver is somewhere in the 900,000 range. It is over the range of what we're looking for. I do know that. But at the same time, for whatever reason, well, we know what reason. I shouldn't say for whatever reason. But they have not just exceeded the county and city boundaries of the city of Denver. They're up into Westminster in Jefferson County. They're up in other areas of other cities, and not far, but just far enough, if you know what I mean, to take advantage of the division, and that it's an intentional division. But the problem with that, and what causes this issue, is that you want a representative of the people of your area, just like in Madison and Hamilton, everyone said there. You're supposed to be getting a representative of the people of that area. And the problem we have, and they're supposed to be taking their issues and their complaints and what's going on there and bringing that to our government. And discuss this and bring this to maybe a resolution. Exactly. The problem with what we have now, obviously, is they are now in another city. Yeah, it's adjacent. It's still quote unquote Denver, but it's run by a different municipality. It's run by a different county. You have different issues in that county. They have a different council. They have a different county commissioner. They have all these different issues inside, even though it's just one part across the street. The people still have different issues. And by doing this gerrymandering, you're broken down our counties. You're broken down our regular divisions. You've now separated a group of people in the same county by two different representatives. And why would if the issues are in Denver, that person is from Denver, how are they going to represent the people in Westminster or these other places, these other cities that are involved in this? They're not going to want to focus on those issues. They're bringing their own Denver issues to the government and to the U.S. Congress. And by doing that, it has eroded public trust, and then the voters don't feel like they're getting represented correctly. And as doing such, it erodes public trust. It erodes public faith in the government. They see the division. They see why they're doing this. A lot of people that follow enough politics know, and current events know, that this is not right. And I believe this is probably a 90% issue at least. I know, on one side, Democrats would say, oh, this is great for us because we get a few more seats. And the Republicans would say, oh, this is great for us in Texas. This is going to give us a few more seats. But what they fail to realize is the actual division and lack of faith and trust in our government that is occurring by doing such thing. And it is really sad and needs to be rectified. In my Sentinel Republic book, I like I say, I didn't really talk about this, and I do regret that. I wish I would have added this term in there, but I am going to add it in a future one. I do have plans on that, and I've already outlined it. So I do want to discuss this further later on down the road. That all being said, the quick solution to this problem is we're going to need some kind of either an amendment or some kind of a constitutional law. It'd probably have to be an amendment at this point, because it would be having to force a change on states, and that would prevent this kind of things from happening, because we have to fix this. The people in the in this here, just like I say in the Denver issues, the people in one section of these areas is not going to be represented by the other section north. They can't bring that community together. They can't bring that county together. They can't bring that local jurisdiction together. They're all different people from all different areas, but yet they're separated by a whole chunk of land here based around this situation. And my proposal, of course, is a pretty simple one, and that would be a strict. I know some states do have this in their constitution, strict county line or a geographical boundary, meaning like a river. But most counties are already broke down like that. Most counties aren't separated by or if there is a river, or if there is a certain geographical thing, they are separated by that. And keep the counties that have the same type of people that are run by the same thing. And I do understand, like rural counties, you're going to need to group a few of them together to equal a population that would be concurrent and associated with that group. But that representative can then focus on just those areas, instead of some of these districts go through many counties and just pieces of them broke down. So these people don't get a accurate representation. They got 4 different congressmen in the same county. How does that happen? It's like, and those might be exaggerations, but at the same time, you get where I'm going there. They're not representative, correctly. They need to have their own Congress, not just because an individual person doesn't have as much influence as a county member. But the county member, if he has like 4 different congressmen, who does he answer to? He can complain to each one, but does he have the influence over each one? And, in each one's, and some of them might not even be from his county, and a lot of them aren't. Even though they might be 3 different districts in the same county, in a large county or something, they might be represented by a different one. And each one, and none of them from that county. That's not a representation of that county. I know it is tough. You can't have a perfect world. There's no real perfect way to do this. I mean, I guess if you sat down and want to say, hey, we can group these counties and make one county out of it, and then we make all counties equal, but you run into a lot of issues with geographical size, and counties would have a hard time maintaining law enforcement and coverage, especially in small rural areas. So those kind of situations are very tough to negotiate. It already is in some ways. Some counties are just too big geographically to maintain a accurate what do you want to call it, a great coverage of law enforcement or whatever needs to be done in governance, just because of the large jurisdictions. Some have just so much population that they are too big in itself. There's too many people in that county, and that erodes democracy, and that erodes representation and everything else in that area. Once a certain county or size gets too big, then you got bureaucracy, and then you get erosion of that own public trust, and what leads to a lot of of these problems I see in cities, just because they're so large and they're controlled. One person, or like a large mayor or whatever, is controlling just such a huge area, it becomes a bureaucratic nightmare that is easily corrupted, which is very unfortunate. So it's it's a tough sell. I know it's a really tough situation, but we have to find a way to come together on this. There's got to be a way and this here is not the solution. This needs to be fixed. That we have to come up with a way to incorporate a county like the bureaus of New York, borough of New York. Each one has to have a certain breakdown, and we have to have straight lines. Like, let's say we have the city of Denver. None of these whirly squirrely lines here breaking down. I know there's a lot more people in these metro areas. They might not encompass. One county might have 2 million people, then we split it right down the middle. They have to be straight lines. You got to have to make straight rules. You got to make clear rules. Encompassing 50 counties. Like, say the population was never you can't come up with extreme or an accurate population to represent a certain group. There's no way to do it, and they understood that, I think, even at the time, and that's why they didn't put that rule in. They did have an estimated time based on conventions that when they met, and I remember them starting, I think it was like 30,000. But at the same time, of course our population's now 300 and some million, but at the same time, we have to come up with a way to strengthen these borders to represent that local and similar group and governed group, and represent our population correctly, and that will enable them to bring the right kind of representation to our Congress, and then know what our current area's issues are, where they can raise these in Congress. With all that said, I do hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's Friday today, so I got my Friday the 13th shirt on. Jason Voorhees is here. It's going here. That's gerrymandering himself, coming back from the grave to haunt us. I do hope we can come to some kind of agreement on here. Hopefully we can. I do hope you enjoyed the information. I hope you enjoyed the opinions. I shouldn't say so much opinions, but these are, I think, are political science pretty good hypotheses and things. I hope you like this video, and I hope you join me for the next time when I cover a new topic. I hope you have a great rest of the day.